You're sitting at dinner with people you love. Someone asks if you want more food. You're full. You know you're full. Your body is telling you clearly and without ambiguity that you don't want any more. And yet, before you can even think, you hear yourself say yes. You watch your hand reach for the plate. You feel the familiar sensation of overriding yourself, of betraying some small, quiet voice inside you that tried to speak and was ignored, not by them, by you. And this isn't about dinner. This is about the meeting where you agreed to take on extra work you didn't have time for, the relationship you stayed in 2 years too long, the favor you said yes to even though you were already drowning, the way you've spent your whole life nodding along to things that cost you, things that drained you, things that asked you to shrink yourself into someone easier for everyone else to be around. You don't know when it started. You don't remember learning it. But somewhere deep in your body is this truth that you absorbed before you had words for it. Your no doesn't matter. Your preferences don't matter. What you want, what you need, what you feel, these are inconveniences. These are problems to be solved by making them disappear. And so you did. You made them disappear. Perhaps you don't even remember when it started. There was no single moment of decision, no clear before and after, just a gradual dimming, a slow fade. The volume on your inner voice turned down so low, you forgot you had one. And now here you are, decades later, still performing accommodation, still offering yourself up to be shaped by everyone's needs but your own. Still saying yes when you mean no, still apologizing for existing, still waiting for permission to want what you want. This is what happens to children who are never allowed to say no. Before we go any further, I want to be precise about what we're discussing. This isn't about children whose parents sometimes said, "You need to eat your vegetables," or "It's bedtime now." Healthy parenting involves limits. Children need structure. They need adults who can hold boundaries on their behalf until they develop the capacity to hold their own. What we're talking about is different. We're talking about environments where the child's inner world, their preferences, their resistance, their emerging sense of self, was consistently treated as irrelevant, problematic, or non-existent, where the child's no was not just overridden when necessary, but was never granted legitimacy in the first place, where the child learned through thousands of interactions that their job was to be moldable rather than to be themselves. This can happen in families that look perfectly fine from the outside. In fact, it often does. The most insidious forms of this pattern occur in homes where there's no obvious abuse, no screaming, no violence, just a steady, invisible erosion of the child's sense of self through well-intentioned but relentless control. To understand how a person can reach adulthood without access to their own desires, their own boundaries, their own voice, we have to understand something about how children are designed to develop. And the word designed is deliberate here, because the need for autonomy isn't a preference or a personality trait. It's a fundamental requirement for healthy psychological development. Psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, the architects of self-determination theory, have spent decades studying what human beings need to thrive. Their research, spanning cultures and contexts, has identified 3 basic psychological needs that are as essential to mental health as food and water are to physical survival. The first is competence. the need to feel capable and effective. The second is relatedness, the need to feel connected to others, to belong. And the third, the one that matters most for our purposes today, is autonomy. Autonomy doesn't mean independence. It doesn't mean being alone or not needing anyone. Autonomy, in the psychological sense, means having a sense of volition, the feeling that your actions come from you, that you have choice, that you are the author of your own life. When this need is met, people are more motivated, more engaged, more creative, more resilient. When it's thwarted, something breaks. Deci and Ryan found that when environments consistently undermine autonomy, when people are controlled, pressured, or denied meaningful choice, motivation erodes, self-regulation suffers, well-being declines, and this is true for adults. For children, whose personalities are still forming, whose brains are still developing, the effects are even more profound. Children need to feel that their internal experiences, their preferences, their opinions, their resistance, are real and valid. Not that they always get what they want. Boundaries matter. Limits are healthy. But there's a difference between a child who hears, "No, you can't have ice cream for dinner, but I understand you're disappointed," and a child who hears, "Stop crying, you shouldn't be upset, you don't really want that anyway." The first child learns that desires exist alongside limits. The second child learns that their desires are wrong for existing at all. Let's talk about what's actually happening in these homes. Not the obvious cases, not the screaming, not the hitting, not the clear abuse that anyone would recognize as harmful. Let's talk about the subtler thing, the well-meaning thing, the thing that looks like good parenting from the outside, but quietly erases a child from the inside. Some parents are controlling because they're anxious. They can't tolerate uncertainty, so they try to eliminate it by eliminating their child's unpredictability. They need to know where their child is, what they're thinking, who their friends are, not out of interest, but out of fear. The child picks up on this fear. They learn that their independence is a threat, that their separateness causes distress, and so they learn to minimize themselves to protect their parents' fragile nervous system. Some parents are controlling because they're perfectionists. They have a vision of how things should be, how the house should look, how the family should function, how the child should behave, and deviation from that vision feels intolerable. These children learn that their spontaneity is an inconvenience, that their natural impulses are messy and unwelcome, that love is conditional on compliance. Some parents are controlling because they themselves were never allowed autonomy and they can't give what they never received. They're not trying to harm their children. They're simply repeating the only template they know. The child feels the constraint but can't name it because their parent seems loving, seems involved, seems like they care so much. And some parents don't look controlling at all. They're warm and engaged and present, but they have a subtle habit of overriding their child's experience. The child says they're not hungry, and the parent says, "You must be, you barely ate at lunch." The child says they don't like a particular activity, and the parent says, "But you loved it last time." The child says they're fine, and the parent says, "No, I can tell something's wrong." This is sometimes called psychological control, a concept extensively studied by researchers like Brian Barber and Bart Sonens. Unlike behavioral control, which sets limits on actions, psychological control intrudes on the child's inner world. It manipulates through guilt, withdraws affection as punishment, invalidates the child's perception of their own experience. It communicates in countless small ways. I know what's happening inside you better than you do. A child can't argue with this. A child doesn't have the cognitive tools to say, actually, I'm the only one who has direct access to my internal states. They just know that when they feel one thing and their parent tells them they feel another, something is disorienting and wrong. So they start to doubt themselves. They learn to look outward for information that should come from within. They lose the connection to their own experience before they even knew they had it. Here's the paradox that traps these children. They need their parents to survive. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and expanded by Mary Ainsworth, tells us that children are biologically programmed to form bonds with their caregivers. This isn't optional. A child cannot choose not to attach. Even when the parent is the source of harm, the child's nervous system still reaches toward them, still seeks their approval, still organizes itself around the task of maintaining that relationship. Bowlby called the caregiver a secure base, the person from whom a child draws enough safety to explore the world. When the parent is reliably responsive and attuned, the child develops secure attachment. They internalize the sense that they are worthy of care, that the world is generally safe, that they can venture out and come back and still be loved. But what happens when the price of attachment is the erasure of self? When a parent only attunes to certain parts of the child, the compliant parts, the agreeable parts, the parts that don't cause problems, the child faces an impossible bind. They need connection to survive. They also have authentic impulses, preferences, and resistance. And they learn, through hundreds of small interactions, that these authentic impulses threaten the connection they cannot live without. So they make a choice. Not consciously, they're too young for that. But their developing brain makes a calculation. If I have to choose between being myself and being loved, I will choose love. I will abandon myself before I risk abandonment by you. This is the devil's bargain at the heart of insecure attachment. The child purchases connection at the price of authenticity. They secure their survival by surrendering their self. And the tragedy is that it works, at least well enough. The parent, receiving compliance instead of resistance, feels that things are going smoothly. The child, receiving continued care, feels that they've succeeded. No one realizes that something essential has been lost. Ainsworth's research identified different attachment styles based on how infants responded to separation from their caregivers and reunion with them. Securely attached infants were distressed when their caregiver left, but easily comforted upon return. They had internalized the sense that their caregiver was reliable, that their needs would be met, that the world was fundamentally safe. But children who weren't allowed authentic self-expression often develop what's called anxious ambivalent attachment. They become clingy and preoccupied with the caregiver, desperately seeking reassurance that they're loved. Or they develop avoidant attachment, learning to suppress their needs entirely, acting as if they don't need anyone at all. In the most severe cases, typically where the caregiver was also a source of fear, children develop disorganized attachment, caught between the need to approach and the need to flee, with no coherent strategy for maintaining the relationship. These attachment patterns don't stay in childhood. They become templates for all relationships. The anxious child becomes the adult who needs constant reassurance, who can't tolerate uncertainty in relationships, who reads abandonment into every silence. The avoidant child becomes the adult who keeps everyone at arm's length, who values independence over connection, who feels uncomfortable with intimacy. And both types share the underlying wound, a childhood that taught them love was conditional, that connection required performance, that they couldn't trust their own experience. Psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott described this as the development of a false self, a compliant persona constructed to meet the expectations of the environment. The false self is adaptive. It keeps the child safe, but it comes at a cost. The true self, the spontaneous, authentic core of the person, goes into hiding. And sometimes it stays hidden for so long that the person forgets it exists at all. Pete Walker, a psychotherapist who specializes in complex trauma, identified a fourth response to threat that sits alongside the familiar fight, flight, and freeze. He called it the Fawn response. Fight, flight, and freeze are well known. When we perceive danger, our nervous system mobilizes us to attack, run away, or shut down. These responses are ancient, hardwired, shared with other animals, but Walker noticed something in his clinical work with trauma survivors. A fourth pattern that didn't fit neatly into the existing categories. When a child grows up in an environment where their survival depends on pleasing others, where their safety is contingent on keeping their caregivers happy, they may develop fawning as their primary strategy for navigating danger. They learn to appease, to accommodate, to read the room and become whatever it requires. They become exquisitely attuned to the moods of others while losing all attunement to themselves. As Walker describes it, fawn types seek safety by merging with the wishes, needs, and demands of others. They act as if they unconsciously believe that the price of admission to any relationship is the forfeiture of all their needs, rights, preferences, and boundaries. This doesn't look like trauma. From the outside, these children look easy. They're cooperative. They're helpful. They're praised for being mature, for being good, for not causing trouble. Teachers love them. Other parents comment on how well behaved they are. No one sees the erasure happening inside. The fawn response is particularly common in children of emotionally volatile parents, those whose moods were unpredictable, whose approval could be withdrawn without warning, whose love felt conditional on the child's ability to keep them calm. It's also common in children of narcissistic parents who needed the child to serve as an extension of themselves rather than as a separate person. And it develops in children of depressed or overwhelmed parents who needed the child to become a caretaker far too young. In each case, the underlying dynamic is the same. The child learns that their survival depends on attending to someone else's emotional state rather than their own. They become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signs of what others need. They develop an almost supernatural ability to read a room, to sense tension, to know what will please and what will provoke, and they lose all capacity to read themselves. Clinical psychologist Ariel Schwartz notes that the fawn response involves disconnecting from one's own emotions, sensations, and needs, initially because expressing them wasn't safe, and eventually because the disconnection becomes automatic. The child learns to withhold their authentic sadness, fear, and anger to avoid the wrath or disappointment of their caregiver. As a result, they turn their negative feelings inward, directing them at themselves in the form of self-criticism, self-doubt, and sometimes self-harm. By the time they reach adulthood, they don't even know they're doing it. They're not aware of the fawning because they've never known anything else. It feels like their personality. It feels like who they are. But it's not who they are. It's who they had to become. Imagine for a moment that you are 4 years old. You're at the playground and another child takes your toy. You feel something hot and urgent rise in your chest. This is yours. You were playing with it. You don't want to give it up. You open your mouth to protest, and your mother, watching from the bench, catches your eye. Her look says, "Don't make a scene. Be nice. Share." So you swallow the protest. You let the toy go. You feel something strange, a kind of betrayal, a leaving of yourself, but you don't have words for it. What you have is your mother's approving smile. What you have is the sense that you did the right thing. Now imagine this happens not once, but thousands of times. Thousands of moments where your natural impulse is corrected, redirected, shamed away. Your anger is too much. Your joy is too loud. Your sadness makes everyone uncomfortable. Your preferences are inconvenient. Your boundaries are selfish. What do you learn? You learn that your internal compass is broken, that you cannot trust yourself, that your instincts will lead you wrong. You learn to outsource the task of knowing what you want, what you feel, what you should do. You look to others to tell you who you are. And here's what's particularly painful. You probably don't remember learning this. There was no single moment when you decided to abandon yourself. It happened gradually, in countless small interactions, through a process more like erosion than explosion. The person you might have become was worn away so slowly that you don't even know what you lost. Some people with this history develop what psychologists call an external locus of control, the belief that outcomes in life are determined by forces outside themselves rather than by their own actions. Why wouldn't they? Their early experience taught them that their actions, their choices, their preferences didn't influence outcomes. The adults around them did whatever they were going to do regardless of the child's input. Control was an illusion they learned to stop reaching for. This external locus of control can persist into adulthood, manifesting as passivity, fatalism, or a pervasive sense that life is happening to you rather than through you. You don't apply for the job because what's the point? You probably won't get it. You don't leave the unhappy relationship because these things never work out anyway. You don't pursue your dreams because dreams are for people who have the luxury of thinking they can shape their futures. This is the foundation for what will later become codependency. Not a character flaw, not a weakness, an adaptation, a survival strategy developed in childhood that persists long after the original danger has passed. Codependency researchers have traced this pattern back to its origins. Jonas Webb, who coined the term childhood emotional neglect, describes how children whose emotional needs go unacknowledged grow up disconnected from their feelings and unable to access the valuable information those feelings contain. They struggle to identify what they need because no one ever helped them learn that their needs were real. They have difficulty setting boundaries because they were never allowed to have any. These children grow into adults who are exhausted all the time, who give and give until there's nothing left, who attract relationships with takers because they've been trained to be givers, who feel vaguely guilty when they rest, who apologize when someone bumps into them, who say sorry for existing. There's a concept in psychology called learned helplessness. It was discovered accidentally by Martin Seligman in the 1960s during experiments that, by modern standards, would be considered unethical. Dogs were exposed to electric shocks they could not escape. Later, when they were placed in situations where escape was possible, they didn't try. They had learned that their actions didn't matter. They lay down and accepted the pain. For decades, researchers assumed that helplessness was something that had to be learned, that the brain's default state was to believe in control, and trauma taught it otherwise. But recent neuroscience has turned this understanding on its head. It turns out that passivity is the brain's default response to prolonged aversive events. Control is what has to be learned. When you're repeatedly exposed to situations you can't influence, you don't learn helplessness. You fail to learn that your actions matter. Think about what this means for children who are never allowed to say no. Every time they express a preference and it's overridden, every time they resist and are forced to comply, every time they try to assert themselves and fail, their brain is learning, or rather failing to learn, that they have any power over their own lives. The neural pathways that should be developing, the ones that connect intention to action to outcome, are being atrophied through disuse. The prefrontal cortex, which mediates the sense of agency and control, doesn't get the experiences it needs to develop properly. Instead, the brain learns a kind of functional passivity, a state of waiting for external direction rather than generating internal initiative. The good news from neuroscience is that the brain retains plasticity throughout life. The pathways that didn't develop in childhood can still be built in adulthood. It's harder, it takes longer, but it's possible. Every time you make a choice and experience its consequences, especially when that choice is honored by others, you're building the neural architecture of agency that was denied to you as a child. This doesn't look like depression, not yet. It looks like compliance. It looks like agreeableness. It looks like a child who goes along with things. But inside, something is calcifying. A sense of agency that should be developing is being stunted instead. And then one day, much later, this person will be asked what they want for dinner, and they'll freeze. They'll be asked what career they want to pursue, and they won't know. They'll be asked what would make them happy, and they'll search and search inside themselves and find nothing but a vast, empty room where the answer should be. Now they're adults. Now they're navigating relationships, workplaces, friendships, marriages, and the patterns they developed in childhood follow them everywhere. In relationships, they attract partners who take more than they give, not because they're drawn to bad people. Often, their partners are fine, neutral, no worse than average. But the dynamic is unbalanced from the start because our person doesn't know how to advocate for themselves. They overfunction, they accommodate, they make themselves small, and their partner, who might otherwise be capable of equality, settles into the comfortable role of being taken care of. When conflict arises, our person capitulates immediately. They can't tolerate disapproval. They can't sit with the discomfort of someone being unhappy with them. They'll apologize even when they've done nothing wrong because the feeling of having upset someone is unbearable. And slowly, invisible to both of them, the relationship becomes a place where only one person's needs are real. At work, they become the person who never says no, the one who takes on extra projects, stays late, picks up slack. They're promoted for their reliability, but they're also exploited for it. They fantasize about setting boundaries, but the thought fills them with dread. What if people don't like me? What if I'm seen as difficult? What if I lose my job? The fear is out of proportion to the reality, but it feels as primal as survival because, once upon a time, it was. In friendships, they're the listener, the supporter, the one who's always available. People trust them with problems but rarely think to ask how they're doing. And if someone does ask, our person says fine, because admitting otherwise feels like a burden they have no right to impose. And in the quiet moments, alone with themselves, they feel a peculiar emptiness, a sense of not knowing who they are. They've spent so long being what others needed that they lost touch with their own desires, their own opinions, their own identity. They don't know what music they actually like, separate from what others like. They don't know what they believe, separate from what they were taught. They don't know what they want from their one wild and precious life because no one ever asked, and they forgot to wonder. There's a particular quality of exhaustion that comes with this way of living, not the healthy tiredness of effort expended toward meaningful goals, something more fundamental, the exhaustion of constantly monitoring others' emotional states, the exhaustion of performing a version of yourself that doesn't exist, the exhaustion of smiling when you want to scream and agreeing when you want to argue and saying yes when every cell in your body is crying no. People in this pattern often feel like they're running on empty, but they can't identify why. Their lives might look manageable from the outside. They're functioning, they're showing up, they're meeting their obligations, but inside they're depleted, running on fumes, surviving rather than living. The energy that should be available for joy, for creativity, for genuine engagement with life, that energy is being consumed by the endless work of self-erasure. And there's a loneliness too, not the loneliness of isolation. Often these people are surrounded by others, but the loneliness of being unknown. They're present in rooms full of people who have no idea who they really are because they've never shown them. They listen to others share problems while keeping their own locked away. They absorb others' opinions while swallowing their own. They're relationally rich and personally invisible. Here's where it gets complicated. These patterns don't just affect the person who developed them. They ripple outward into the next generation. Research on parenting shows that parents who never developed a secure sense of self tend to struggle with allowing their children autonomy. Not because they don't love their children. Often they love them fiercely, but because they can't tolerate the anxiety of separateness. They become enmeshed. They need their child to be okay so that they can be okay. They hover and control and micromanage, not from malice, but from a terror they can't name. Or they swing to the other extreme. Having experienced the suffocation of over-control, they provide too little structure. They're so afraid of becoming their own parents that they fail to set the limits children need. The child has too much freedom, which creates its own kind of insecurity. Or they find themselves unable to model healthy boundary setting because they don't know what boundaries look like. Their children watch them say yes when they mean no, absorb the lesson that self-advocacy isn't safe, and carry the pattern forward. The cycle continues, not because people are bad parents, not because they don't care, but because you can't give what you never received. You can't teach what you never learned. This is how psychological patterns become intergenerational. The grandmother who was controlled passes it to the mother who was controlled, passes it to the child who is being controlled. Each generation might do it slightly differently. The overt control of one era becomes the anxious hovering of the next, but the underlying dynamic persists. Autonomy is not supported. Selfhood is not nurtured. The child's no remains unwelcome. Breaking this cycle requires enormous awareness and intention. It requires recognizing, often in real time, when you're about to repeat what was done to you. It requires tolerating the anxiety of letting your child be separate from you. It requires sitting with your own unmet needs rather than expecting your child to meet them. It requires, essentially, doing your own healing work so you don't export your wounds onto the next generation. Some people become determined not to repeat their parents' patterns and succeed beautifully. Their awareness transforms into changed behavior. Their children grow up with the autonomy and selfhood their parents didn't have. The cycle breaks. Others, despite their best intentions, find themselves falling into familiar patterns during moments of stress or regression. They hear their parents' words coming out of their mouths. They feel the old impulses to control, to override, to demand compliance. And they have to choose again and again to do something different. This work is ongoing. It's not a one-time fix. It's a practice, a daily decision, a commitment to noticing when the old patterns arise and choosing a different response. It requires support, often from therapists, sometimes from parenting groups, always from honest self-reflection. But it's possible. The chain doesn't have to continue. The path out of this pattern begins with recognition. And recognition, in this context, doesn't mean intellectual understanding. It means felt understanding. The moment when you read something like this and your body responds, when something deep inside you says, "That's me. That's what happened to me." This recognition often happens gradually, in layers. First, you might notice the pattern in your behavior, the chronic yes saying, the inability to rest, the empty exhaustion. Then you might start connecting it to your relationships, the way you always seem to end up in lopsided dynamics, the way you feel invisible even when you're central to others' lives. And eventually, often with the help of therapy or deep reflection, you start to trace it back. You start to see your childhood through new eyes. This is frequently a painful process. The defenses that kept you from seeing the truth of your childhood were there for a reason. Denial protected you when you needed protection. Minimization helped you survive. Normalizing what happened, telling yourself, every family is like this, or my parents did their best, allowed you to maintain the attachment bond you needed. So when those defenses start to dissolve, when you begin to see clearly what was taken from you, the feelings can be overwhelming. There may be rage you didn't know you were carrying, sadness so deep it feels bottomless, a sense of betrayal that's hard to reconcile with your simultaneous love for your family, confusion about which of your memories are accurate and which have been distorted by years of minimization. This recognition can be destabilizing. You might feel grief for the child you were, the one who had to abandon themselves to be loved. You might feel anger at the parents who didn't give you what you needed, even if you can see they were doing their best. You might feel confusion because these patterns are so deeply woven into your sense of identity that you don't know who you'd be without them. All of these responses are appropriate. They're not problems to be solved. They're signals that you're finally allowing yourself to feel what you couldn't feel as a child. The therapeutic frameworks that help with this are less about teaching new skills and more about creating space for a self to emerge. In therapy, for the first time, you might have an experience of being met without conditions, of having your preferences and opinions and resistance be treated as interesting rather than inconvenient, of being asked what you want and having it matter. Internal family systems therapy, developed by Richard Schwartz, offers a way to work with the protective parts of ourselves that developed in childhood. The part that people pleases isn't an enemy to be conquered. It's a protector that learned its job a long time ago. It kept you safe when safe meant compliant. The work isn't to destroy it, but to thank it, to help it update its understanding of what you need now, to introduce it to the self that no longer requires that level of protection. Somatic therapies help you reconnect with the body that learned to hold tension, to numb sensation, to override its own signals. The body remembers what the mind forgets. As trauma expert Bessel van der Kolk has written, working with the body can access patterns that talk therapy alone might not reach. And boundary work, the slow, terrifying practice of saying no, begins not with grand gestures, but with tiny experiments, saying, "Let me think about it," instead of an automatic yes. Noticing when you're about to agree to something you don't want and pausing before you speak. Allowing silence after someone asks you a question, instead of immediately filling it with whatever you think they want to hear. These experiments feel dangerous at first. Your nervous system will scream that you're risking abandonment, that you're being selfish, that people will stop loving you. You will have to feel that fear and do it anyway, not because the fear is wrong, but because it's old. It's responding to a threat that no longer exists. There's something essential that happens when you finally allow yourself to say no. It's not just about the thing you're refusing. It's not about whether you attend the party or take on the project or eat the second helping. It's about the statement you're making about your own existence. When you say no, you say, "I am here. I have limits. I am not infinitely available to be molded into whatever shape is convenient. I take up space. My preferences are real. My boundaries matter." Every no you utter is a tiny act of self-reclamation, a brick in the foundation of a self that you're building for the first time. This is what was taken from children who were never allowed to say no. Not just the right to refuse specific things, but the deeper right to exist as a separate person with a separate interior life. They were absorbed into their families, their relationships, their roles. They were praised for their selflessness while being robbed of their self. And now, as adults, they have to do the work that should have happened in childhood. They have to differentiate. They have to discover who they are separate from who others want them to be. They have to feel around in the dark for desires and opinions that got shoved into corners so long ago they forgot they were there. This work is hard. It's disorienting. It means disappointing people who got used to your endless accommodation. It means sitting with guilt and anxiety as your nervous system adjusts to a new way of being. It means grieving the years you spent as a ghost in your own life. But here's what waits on the other side: the experience of being real, of knowing what you want because you can finally hear yourself think, of relationships where you show up as you, not as a performance of pleasantness, of saying yes and meaning it, because your yeses finally have teeth now that you're also capable of no. If you recognize yourself in this, I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are adapted. Your people-pleasing, your inability to set boundaries, your chronic self-abandonment. These are not character flaws. They are strategies that kept you safe in an environment where being yourself was dangerous. The fact that you developed these patterns is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It's evidence that you did what you had to do to survive, that you were smart enough, sensitive enough, adaptive enough to read your environment and become what it required. The work now is to realize that the environment has changed. You are no longer a child dependent on people who couldn't tolerate your autonomy. You are an adult with choices you didn't have then. The strategies that protected you have become prisons. The adaptations that saved you are now limiting you, and you can learn. That's the other thing the research tells us, that these patterns, while deeply ingrained, are not permanent. The brain retains its plasticity. New experiences can create new neural pathways. The nervous system can be retrained. What was learned can be unlearned, and what was never learned can be learned late. It won't be quick. It won't be easy. You will stumble and fall back into old patterns 1,000 times. You will catch yourself saying yes when you meant no, and feel the familiar collapse of self-betrayal. But you will also gradually find moments of firmness, moments where you honor your own limits, moments where you choose yourself, maybe for the first time. Those moments will feel strange at first, uncomfortable, even wrong. That's okay. It takes time to learn that you're allowed to exist on your own terms. It takes practice to trust that people can love you even when you don't give them everything they want. But you are allowed. You have always been allowed. You just didn't know it yet. The little child inside you who learned to disappear, they're still there, still waiting, still hoping someone will finally ask what they want. You can be that person. You can be the one who asks. You can be the one who listens. You can be the one who finally treats your own experience as if it matters. Because it does matter. You matter. Your preferences matter. Your boundaries matter. Your no matters. Not because you've earned it. Not because you've proven yourself. Not because you've become someone worthy of having limits. You matter because you exist. You always have. You just didn't know it yet. Let's go back to that dinner table where we started. The one where someone asks if you want more food. You're full. You know you're full. And this time, something is different. You feel the old pull to say yes. You feel the familiar override wanting to happen. But there's something else now. A small, quiet voice inside you, the one that's been getting stronger, the one you've been learning to hear. It says, "I'm okay. I've had enough. I can disappoint this person and survive it." And you open your mouth and you say, "No, thank you. I'm full." It's such a small thing, such an ordinary moment. No one else at the table notices anything significant has happened. But you notice. You feel the ground firm under your feet. You feel the solidity of a self that chose itself. You feel the extraordinary relief of simply telling the truth about what you want. This is what it feels like to come home to yourself. This is what was waiting for you all along on the other side of no. And now that you've found the door, you can open it whenever you want. But let's go deeper, because understanding the pattern isn't the same as being free of it. And there are particular ways this plays out that deserve examination. Consider the phenomenon of chronic indecision. You might not connect it to your childhood, but the relationship is direct. When you spend your formative years being told what to choose, what to want, what to feel, or having your choices overridden so consistently that making them seems pointless, you never develop the internal muscle of decision-making. Choice requires access to your own preferences, and your preferences were systematically invalidated. So now you stand in front of a menu at a restaurant, paralyzed. It's not about the food. It's about the terrifying vulnerability of declaring what you want. What if you choose wrong? What if someone else would have made a better choice? What if your choice inconveniences the waiter or the kitchen or your dining companions? Better to ask what others are having. Better to say, "I'll have the same." Better to defer the terrible risk of wanting something specific. This extends into every area of life. Career decisions become excruciating. You don't know what you want to do because you never learned that what you want is a valid data point. So you fall into jobs that present themselves, relationships that pursue you, life paths that others suggest. You become what circumstances make of you, not what you would have chosen, because choosing requires a self that can desire, and that self went underground decades ago. Some people with this pattern become highly accomplished. They achieve remarkable things. But when you ask them what they want next, what dream they're pursuing, what vision drives them, they go blank. The achievements were about meeting expectations, about being good enough, about earning love through performance. They were never about genuine desire. And here's what's particularly tragic. These accomplished people often feel like frauds, not because they didn't do the work. They did, often more work than anyone around them. But because they know somewhere deep down that their achievements don't belong to them. They belong to the performance, to the false self, to the person they had to become to survive. Let's talk about anger, because if you grew up not allowed to say no, you probably have a complicated relationship with anger. Anger is what happens when boundaries are violated. It's the natural, healthy response to someone encroaching on your space, taking what's yours, treating you as less than. In a well-functioning psyche, anger arises, communicates important information, motivates a protective action, and then dissipates. It's a messenger. But in children who weren't allowed to have boundaries, anger became a problem. Anger at your parents, the people you need to survive, is terrifying. It threatens the attachment bond. It risks abandonment. And if your parents didn't tolerate your anger, If they punished it or withdrew love when you expressed it, you learned to turn it inward. Depression has been described as anger turned against the self. And while that's an oversimplification, depression is complex and multifactorial. There's truth in it. When you can't direct anger outward at its appropriate target, it doesn't disappear. It redirects. It becomes self-criticism, self-hatred, a voice inside you that says you're worthless and wrong and bad, or it leaks out sideways. You become passive-aggressive, expressing resistance indirectly because direct expression feels impossible. You forget to do things you didn't want to do. You agree to plans and then sabotage them. You say yes with your words and no with your actions, leaving everyone confused, including yourself. Or the anger accumulates until it explodes. You're so controlled, so accommodating, so endlessly patient until suddenly you're not. A small trigger releases years of swallowed fury, and you're screaming at someone over something that doesn't warrant screaming. And then you feel terrible. You apologize profusely. You redouble your efforts to be good, to be compliant, to never let that ugliness out again. The cycle continues. What you might not realize is that your anger is appropriate. It always was. The problem wasn't that you felt angry. The problem was that you couldn't safely express it. The anger you've been carrying is legitimate. It's the natural response to having your needs dismissed, your voice silenced, your self-erased. It deserves expression, not as explosion, but as acknowledgement, as information, as fuel for change. There's another aspect of this pattern that doesn't get discussed enough: the relationship with your own body. When you grow up not allowed to say no, you often lose connection to your physical self. Your body was trying to tell you things. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I need to rest, this doesn't feel good. And you learned to override those signals. You had to. Your body's needs were inconvenient to the people around you, and their needs came first. So you developed the ability to push through exhaustion, to ignore pain, to disconnect from sensation. This might have been praised. You might have been called tough, resilient, hardworking. But what you actually were was dissociated, cut off from the physical experience of being alive. This dissociation takes many forms. You might not recognize hunger until you're shaking. You might not realize you need to use the bathroom until it's urgent. You might not notice you're sick until you collapse. Your body sends signals, and you've trained yourself not to receive them. For some people, this manifests as chronic health problems. The stress of constant self-override takes a toll. The body, unable to communicate through normal channels, starts to scream. Autoimmune conditions, chronic pain, digestive issues. The patterns have names in medical textbooks, but their root is often the same. A nervous system that never learned it was safe to feel. For others, the disconnection from the body shows up in struggles with food. You eat when you're not hungry because someone expected you to. You don't eat when you are hungry because your needs are always last priority. You lose touch with fullness, with satisfaction, with the simple pleasure of nourishment. Food becomes complicated in ways that have nothing to do with food itself. Healing this disconnection requires what might feel like an absurdly basic practice: asking yourself what you feel, what you need, what your body is telling you, and then believing the answer, not overriding it, not dismissing it, not deciding that your physical experience is wrong or inconvenient. Just noticing, just listening, just beginning to treat your body like it belongs to you. Relationships are where this pattern does its most destructive work. And I don't mean that you end up with bad people, though sometimes you do. I mean that the structure of your relating is warped from the start. When you don't know how to say no, you can't truly say yes. Your consent is compromised by default. Every agreement you make is suspect, because how can you give genuine agreement when refusal isn't a real option in your psyche? This creates a particular kind of loneliness. You might have people around you, even people who love you, but no one knows you, because you've never shown them who you actually are. You've shown them the performance, the version that says yes, the version that anticipates their needs and meets them before they are even expressed, the version that never asks for anything, never complains, never makes waves. And here's the terrible irony. In trying to make yourself lovable by being endlessly accommodating, you've made yourself impossible to love in any real sense. Because the person being loved isn't you, it's the role you play. And somewhere inside you, you know this. You feel the hollowness of receiving affection that's directed at a facade. Some people in this pattern end up in relationships with narcissists or other controlling partners. This isn't an accident. Narcissists and people pleasers fit together like puzzle pieces. One demands, the other complies. One takes, the other gives. The system is dysfunctional but stable, and more importantly, it's familiar. It replicates the dynamics of childhood, which the nervous system recognizes as normal, even when it's painful. But plenty of people with this pattern end up with genuinely good partners who are baffled by the dynamic. They didn't ask to be put on a pedestal. They didn't want a partner who anticipates every need before it's spoken. They wanted an equal. They wanted a person. And instead, they got a shapeshifter, a chameleon, someone who seems to have no preferences of their own. These partners often report feeling lonely in the relationship. They don't know how to reach the real person under the pleasing veneer. They ask what their partner wants and get whatever you want. They try to have conflicts because conflicts are how intimacy deepens, and find their partner collapsing into agreement before any real exchange can happen. They're starving for authenticity and can't get their hands on it. Here's something important to understand about the nervous system. It doesn't distinguish between physical danger and social danger. When rejection or disapproval feels life-threatening, that's not a metaphor. That's your body genuinely responding as if you're about to be eaten by a tiger. For children who weren't allowed to say no, the disapproval of caregivers was paired neurologically with survival threat. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, learned that displeasing others means danger, and that learning doesn't just disappear when you grow up and move out and become technically independent. It's encoded in your body's threat response. This is why you can know intellectually that nothing terrible will happen if you say no to a request, and still feel your heart race, your palms sweat, your throat tighten. Your rational brain says, this is fine. Your threat detection system says, we're all going to die. And the threat detection system tends to win because it's older, faster, and more powerful. Overcoming this requires working with the body, not just the mind. Cognitive strategies can help, but they're not enough. You can't just think your way out of a survival response. You have to give your nervous system new experiences, repeated evidence that disapproval doesn't actually lead to catastrophe, until it slowly updates its threat assessment. This is why change is so slow. This is why you backslide. This is why the pattern reasserts itself in moments of stress, even after years of work. The neural pathways are deep. The learning is old. But new pathways can be built. New learning can happen. The brain retains its capacity for change throughout life. It just takes time. Let's address the guilt. If you're beginning to recognize your own childhood in this, you might be feeling guilt about blaming your parents, especially if your parents weren't overtly abusive, especially if they were well-meaning, especially if they loved you in their way. This guilt is itself part of the pattern. You were trained to protect your parents from your negative feelings about them. Acknowledging that they harmed you, even unintentionally, feels like betrayal. It feels like something you're not allowed to feel. So let's be clear. Understanding how you were affected is not the same as condemning your parents. People can harm their children while loving them. People can have good intentions and still cause damage. Your parents were almost certainly doing the best they could with the resources they had, and the result was still something that wounded you. Both things can be true. What you experienced was real. The impact on you was real. Naming that impact doesn't require villains. It just requires honesty. And there may be grief. Grief for the childhood you didn't have. Grief for the self that got lost along the way. Grief for all the years you spent being half alive, pleasing others, betraying yourself. This grief is healthy. It's appropriate. It's part of the healing. Let yourself grieve. You're allowed to mourn what was taken from you, even if no one meant to take it. You're allowed to be sad that your relationship with your parents came at the cost of your relationship with yourself. You're allowed to wish it had been different. What does healing actually look like in practice? It looks like pausing before you say yes, creating a tiny gap between the request and your response, using that gap to check in with yourself. Do I actually want to do this? It looks like starting small. You don't have to overhaul your entire life immediately. Start with low-stakes situations. Tell the barista you want a different drink than what you accidentally ordered. Decline an invitation you don't have the energy for. Express a preference about where to eat dinner. It looks like tolerating discomfort. When you start saying no, you will feel anxious, guilty, sure that you've done something terrible. That discomfort is the feeling of your nervous system adjusting. It's not evidence that you've made a mistake. It's evidence that you're doing something different. It looks like noticing your own needs. Multiple times a day, ask yourself, what do I need right now? What does my body want? What would feel good? This might sound absurdly basic, but for people who've been disconnected from themselves, it's revolutionary. You're learning to receive signals you've spent decades blocking. It looks like allowing yourself to disappoint people. This is perhaps the hardest part. Your whole psyche is organized around avoiding disappointment. But disappointing others is sometimes necessary for honoring yourself. And here's the secret. Most people can handle disappointment. They might feel momentarily frustrated, and then they adapt. Your no doesn't destroy them. It just asks them to adjust. It looks like finding relationships where you can practice being real, a good therapist, a trustworthy friend, a partner who wants to know who you actually are. These relationships become laboratories for authenticity, places where you can experiment with honesty and discover that the world doesn't end. It looks like repetition. You will practice saying no, and then you'll find yourself back in the old pattern. You'll set a boundary and then let it erode. You'll discover your own preference and then abandon it the moment someone else has a different one. This isn't failure. It's the nature of deep change. You stumble, you notice, you try again, over and over. Each stumble is information. Each try is practice. There's one more thing I want you to understand, and it might be the most important thing of all. Somewhere inside you, there is a self, a real one, a true one, the one that got buried under all the adaptation and compliance and shape-shifting. That self didn't die. It went into hiding. It's been waiting all this time for conditions safe enough to emerge. And here's what I know about that self. It has opinions. It has preferences. It has things it loves and things it hates and things it's curious about and things it can't stand. It has energy and desire and direction. It knows, in ways your conscious mind might not, what you actually want from your life. Your job now is not to create a self. You already have one. Your job is to create conditions where that self can finally show itself, to clear away the debris, to quiet the voices that tell you your wants don't matter, to build a life that has room for who you actually are. This is slow work. It's often invisible to others. It doesn't make dramatic headlines, but it's the most important work you'll ever do. The work of reclaiming your own existence. You are not the person you had to become. You are the person underneath. And that person, the real one, the buried one, the one who's been waiting, is worth meeting, is worth knowing, is worth building a life around. All those years you spent erased, they weren't wasted. They taught you things about resilience, about other people, about what it costs to abandon yourself. You carry that knowledge now. It's yours, but the erasure is over. It can be over. You can decide, and this is a decision you'll have to make 1,000 times until it becomes natural, that your no matters, that your preferences are real, that your limits are legitimate, that you deserve to take up space in your own life. You learned long ago that the price of love was the forfeiture of self. That was the wrong lesson. It was taught to you by people who didn't know any better, in circumstances you couldn't control. And now you get to learn something new, that real love doesn't require you to disappear, that connection and selfhood aren't opposites, that you can be known, actually known, truly seen, and loved anyway, maybe even loved because of who you actually are, rather than despite it. That's what's waiting for you on the other side of this work. It's not easy to get there, but you've already survived the hard thing. You survived the childhood that asked you to stop existing in order to be loved. Compared to that, learning to say no is manageable. You can do this, and you don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to do it, one small no at a time. I want to end by speaking directly to different people who might be watching this. If you're someone who recognized yourself in every word of this, who felt the resonance in your bones, who maybe even cried watching this because finally someone put language to what you've always felt, you are not alone. There are millions of us. We grew up in different families, different cultures, different circumstances, but we share this wound and we share the possibility of healing. Start where you are. You don't need to have your whole story figured out to begin making changes. You can start practicing small no's today, this week, in the mundane moments of your life. You can start asking yourself what you want, even if you don't know the answer. You can start treating your preferences as information worth attending to, rather than inconveniences to be overridden. Consider finding support. A therapist who understands this terrain can be invaluable, not because you're broken and need fixing, but because having a witness to your experience, someone who can reflect back your reality without judging or minimizing it, can accelerate healing in ways that doing it alone cannot. Look for someone trained in trauma-informed approaches. Ask questions before committing. Make sure the relationship itself feels like practice for authentic relating. If you're watching this and you see your own child in it, if you recognize that you've been the parent who didn't allow the no, please hear this. Awareness is the beginning of change. The fact that you're watching this, that you're willing to consider that you might have caused harm, means you have the capacity to do differently. You didn't know, or you knew but couldn't help it, or you were doing what was done to you. None of that erases the impact, but it does matter. Intentionality matters. Most parents who suppress their children's autonomy aren't trying to hurt them. They're trying to protect them, or manage their own anxiety, or create a family that functions smoothly. The motivations are often understandable, even if the outcomes are harmful. What matters now is what you do next. Can you create more space for your child to have preferences that differ from yours? Can you allow them to say no sometimes, even when it's inconvenient? Can you meet their resistance with curiosity rather than correction? Can you let them know that their inner experience matters to you, that you want to know what they really think and feel? It's not too late. Children are resilient. Relationships can be repaired. The patterns you've established can be interrupted. What your child needs from you is the signal, conveyed through actions, not just words, that who they are is welcome here, that their selfhood is not a problem to be solved, that they matter not just when they're compliant, but always. And if you're watching this as someone who's already done significant work on this wound, who's come a long way from where you started, I want to honor that. The work of reclaiming yourself is hard. It's unglamorous. It happens in small moments that no one else sees. And you've been doing it. You've been showing up for yourself in ways that once would have seemed impossible. Notice how far you've come. The journey isn't over. Maybe it never is. But you're not where you started. There were boundaries you never could have held that you now hold easily. There were no's you never could have spoken that now come naturally. There were parts of yourself you never knew existed that are now central to your identity. That's significant. That's worth celebrating. That's evidence that change is possible, that the patterns laid down in childhood are not destiny. What happens to children who are never allowed to say no? They grow into adults who don't know who they are. They please and accommodate and erase themselves in relationships. They attract dynamics that replicate their childhood. They feel exhausted and empty and disconnected from their own lives. But that's not the end of the story. Because what also happens is this. Some of them start to wake up. Some of them begin to question the patterns. Some of them through therapy or reading or relationships or sheer stubborn survival, start to realize that what they learned wasn't true, that their no does matter, that their preferences are real, that they have the right to take up space. And slowly, painfully, courageously, they start to reclaim themselves. They learn to pause before automatically agreeing. They learn to check in with their own experience before deferring to someone else's. They learn to tolerate the discomfort of disappointing others. They learn for the first time what it feels like to be honest about what they want. They rebuild themselves from the inside out, not becoming someone new, but becoming who they always were underneath the adaptations, recovering the self that went into hiding so long ago, finding their voice, using it. This is possible for you. Whatever was done to you, whatever patterns you've been living out, however disconnected you feel from your own interior, healing is possible. The self that was buried isn't gone. It's waiting. And when you finally meet it, when you finally say no and mean it, when you finally honor your own limits, when you finally show up as yourself rather than as a performance, you'll understand what all this work was for. You'll understand that you were always worth reclaiming. You just didn't know it yet.